You know, if you look at a map of the world today, it seems so permanent. All these neat, distinct countries. But have you ever stopped to ask how we got here? Well, today we're diving into the story of one of the most powerful ideas in all of human history, nationalism. This is the story of an idea that literally redrew the map of Europe and, in doing so, shaped the very world we live in right now. So let's get into it. Our story really kicks off with this image, a dream captured in print. This was made back in 1848 by a French artist, Frédéric Soriot. And what you're seeing is his vision for the future, a world made up of democratic republics. Look at that long train of people from all over the world marching peacefully together past the Statue of Liberty. It's this beautiful utopian idea. But look down here in the foreground. See all those shattered crowns and thrones? That was the reality of 1848. A Europe ruled by all-powerful monarchs and sprawling empires. Soriot's dream wasn't just a pretty picture, it was a radical challenge to the entire world order. So that brings us to the big questions, right? How do we get from that world of empires to our world of nations? And maybe more importantly, was the journey to get there really as peaceful and idealistic as this painting makes it seem? Well, spoiler alert, not even close. As we're about to see, the road from empire to nation-state wasn't paved with just good intentions. It was forged in the fire of revolution and ultimately decided on the battlefield. All right, so to really get what a huge deal nationalism was, you have to understand the world it completely upended. Before the nation-state, Europe was basically a patchwork of huge, multinational dynastic empires. Your identity wasn't about a shared culture or a common language. Nope, it was all about who your king or emperor was. That was it.
And the political system running the show? It was called absolutism, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. The monarch had absolute, total power. There were no checks, no balances. These governments were highly centralized, built around a powerful military, and yeah, they could be incredibly repressive. This was the system that the new idea of the nation was about to go head-to-head with.
And this slide really breaks down the difference. On one hand, you've got the dynastic empire. Think of the massive Habsburg Empire. It was this mishmash of all sorts of different peoples, Germans, Italians, Hungarians, Poles, all living under one ruler. They spoke different languages, had totally different cultures. The only thing tying them together was their loyalty to the emperor. But on the other hand, you have this brand new, totally radical idea of the nation-state. This concept suggested that a state should be made up of citizens who actually share something. A common identity, a history, a desire to build their own future together.
So, where on earth did this crazy idea come from? Well, it didn't just quietly appear. No, it exploded onto the world stage in one specific place, with so much force that it set the entire continent on fire. And I am talking, of course, about the French Revolution of 1789. You see, the French revolutionaries didn't just get rid of their king. They were trying to build a whole new type of community from the ground up. This was about completely rewiring how people thought about themselves and their connection to the state. They brought in these powerful new ideas like la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen. Suddenly, your loyalty wasn't to a king anymore, it was to the nation itself. They created new symbols to rally around, like the tricolor flag, and set up a national assembly that was actually elected by the people. They were actively, consciously trying to create a shared French identity. And then, along comes Napoleon. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because even though he eventually made himself an emperor, he ironically became one of the biggest exporters of revolutionary ideas. As his armies marched all across Europe, they took the Napoleonic Code with them. And this new set of laws just wiped away centuries of old traditions. It got rid of privileges based on birth, it established equality before the law, and it did away with the old feudal system. It's incredible, really. He was a dictator who ended up spreading the seeds of liberty. But, as you can imagine, this was a very double-edged sword. Sure, the French armies brought some great reforms, but they also brought, well, domination. This German print from the time just perfectly captures that growing resentment. The little plaque is dripping with sarcasm. It says, "Take freedom and equality from us, the model of humanity." People were getting fed up with French rule, the heavy taxes, the censorship, the being forced to join their army. Turns out liberty brought to you by an occupying army doesn't always feel like liberty. So after Napoleon is finally defeated for good in 1815, the old guard, the monarchies of Europe, they try to shove that genie of nationalism right back in the bottle. This kicks off a huge conservative backlash across the continent. But the thing about ideas, they don't just disappear, they just go underground.
You can see what they tried to do right here. At the Congress of Vienna, all the major powers got together and literally redrew the map of Europe. Their whole goal was to turn back the clock. They wanted to put the old monarchies back in power and set up a system that would prevent another French Revolution or another Napoleon. But in doing that, they completely ignored what the people in these lands actually wanted. They drew lines all over the map, creating a recipe for decades of future conflict.
And in response to this crackdown, revolutionaries organized in secret, and maybe the most important of them all was this man, the Italian firebrand Giuseppe Mazzini. For Mazzini, nationalism wasn't just politics, it was almost a religion. He truly believed that nations were natural, God-given divisions of humanity, and that fighting for a unified Italy was his sacred duty. He started secret societies like Young Italy to spread his ideas, and he inspired a whole generation of revolutionaries across Europe. In fact, he was so influential that the powerful Austrian Chancellor Metternich, one of the chief architects of that conservative order, called him the most dangerous enemy of our social order. For a revolutionary, you can't get a better compliment than that.
But here's the thing, nationalism wasn't just about secret handshakes and political plots. It was also a massive cultural movement, and it was powered by an artistic trend called Romanticism. Romantics were all about celebrating emotion, intuition, and a shared heritage. Think about the Brothers Grimm in Germany, going around collecting folktales. They weren't just writing children's stories. They believed they were capturing the authentic spirit of the German people. By focusing on folk songs, poetry, and local stories, these artists and thinkers helped create the very idea of a shared past that a modern nation could be built on.
But here's the reality check. Dreams and folktales weren't quite enough to redraw the map of Europe. The big wave of liberal, romantic revolutions in 1848, well, they mostly failed. And after that, something really crucial happened. The idea of nationalism got co-opted by conservatives. They realized that this powerful force could be used not for creating liberty, but for building up the power of the state.
Italy is the perfect case study for this new, more practical kind of nationalism. For centuries, Italy was just a geographical expression, as Metternich put it, just a collection of separate kingdoms, many ruled by foreign powers. But then, through a combination of clever diplomacy by the statesman Count Cavour and the daring military campaigns of the revolutionary hero Giuseppe Garibaldi and his red shirts, everything changed. Through statecraft and force, the patchwork of Italy was finally stitched together into one kingdom by 1870.
And then there was Germany. The man who pulled Germany together wasn't some romantic poet or a liberal idealist. He was Otto von Bismarck, the deeply conservative chief minister of Prussia. Bismarck was the absolute master of what became known as realpolitik, a type of politics based purely on power and practical reality, not on ideals or morals.
Bismarck once famously said that the great questions of the day would not be decided by speeches and votes, but by iron and blood. And he meant it. He unified Germany by deliberately starting and winning 3 short, decisive wars. And the final, incredible result is captured in this painting. In 1871, in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, the very heart of French power, the German Empire was officially proclaimed. A powerful, new nation was born, right in the center of Europe.
So, once you've built a nation, how do you get people to actually feel a connection to it, to this big, abstract idea? Well, artists in the 19th century came up with a clever solution. They personified them. They started painting nations as female figures, or allegories. So for Germany, you had Germania. France had Marianne. And this gave people a concrete, emotional symbol they could actually rally around.
And these paintings weren't just pretty pictures. They were absolutely packed with meaning, like a visual code. You just had to know how to read it. So for Germania, her broken chains symbolize being freed. The crown of oak leaves stands for heroism. She's holding a sword, which shows she's ready to fight, but it's got an olive branch wrapped around it, signaling a willingness to make peace. It's a whole visual language designed to communicate the values and character of the new nation.
By the time we get to the late 19th century, nationalism has changed yet again. That early, idealistic dream of a peaceful family of nations marching together, yeah, that was pretty much gone. It had turned into something far more competitive and, frankly, far more dangerous.
I mean, just think about it. In a little over a single decade, from 1859 to 1871, the entire map of Central Europe was turned upside down. The creation of a unified Italy, and especially a powerful, unified Germany, completely shattered the old balance of power.
And all this new power led to a new, much more aggressive kind of nationalism.
Just look at this painting, Germania guarding the Rhine. She doesn't look hopeful anymore, does she? She looks fierce, defensive. Nationalism became less about unity and freedom and more about us versus them. Nationalist groups became incredibly intolerant of each other, and they were more than ready to go to war.
And where does all that aggressive national pride lead? Well, it spills over directly into a new wave of imperialism. The major European powers started using nationalistic feelings back home to justify their mad scramble for colonies and global power. The goal was no longer just to build a nation, but to build a massive empire. So we come full circle. The idea that began as this beautiful dream of a peaceful family of nations, it succeeded. It built the world of countries that we recognize today. But in creating such fierce loyalties and such bitter rivalries, it also set the stage for the absolute catastrophes of the 20th century. Nationalism built nations, there's no question about that. But what else did it build? Well, that's a question history would soon answer, with fire and blood.